The sun hung lazily over Springfield, casting a golden glow on the town's usual chaos. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the First Church of Springfield buzzed with preparations for the evening's choir rehearsal. Reverend Lovejoy, half asleep, at the pulpit, mumbled about sinners and casseroles, while Marge Simpson arranged hymnals with her usual meticulous care. Ned Flanders, ever the model citizen, darted around the sanctuary, straightening pews and humming "Onward, Christian Soldiers" with his trademark diddly-do enthusiasm. But the air felt heavy, as if the old church walls were holding their breath. The incident came without warning. A low groan echoed through the rafters, and before anyone could react, the ancient statue of St. Jeremiah, rumored to have been carved from a cursed oak, toppled from its pedestal above the altar. It crashed with a thunderous crack, sending a cloud of dust billowing through the sanctuary. Coughs and gasps filled the air as Marge shielded Bart, who was sneaking a slingshot shot at a stained glass window. Ned, closest to the altar, froze, his eyes locked on the shattered statue. The dust settled, revealing a faint acrid smell like burnt hair mixed with something sour. Marge later swore she saw Ned's glasses glint unnaturally, but she brushed it off as a trick of the light. The next morning, Springfield's rumor mill was already churning, but Ned seemed determined to carry on as if nothing had happened. He appeared in the Simpsons' backyard, a tray of freshly baked oatmeal cookies in hand. "Morning, neighborinos," he chirped, his voice as chipper as ever. But Bart, sprawled on the grass with a comic book, noticed something off. Ned's hands trembled slightly, and when Bart reached for a cookie, Ned's grip tightened, cracking the tray's edge. "Whoa, Flanders, you been lifting weights with Jesus or what?" Bart quipped, half laughing. Ned's smile twitched, and for a split second, his eyes seemed to darken, like two black holes swallowing the sunlight. He muttered a quick "okily dokily" and hurried back to his house, leaving Bart staring after him. The real trouble surfaced at the neighborhood association meeting that evening. Held in the community center, the meeting was a typical Springfield affair. Homer dozing off, clutching a donut, while comic book guy droned on about budget cuts for the town square's petunias. Ned, usually the voice of cheerful compromise, sat silently, his fingers drumming an erratic rhythm on the table. When comic book guy suggested diverting flower funds to a comic convention, Ned shot to his feet. "You blasphemous, gluttonous hoarder of inked drivel," he roared, his voice raw and guttural, nothing like his usual sing-song tone. The room fell silent. Even Mayor Quimby, mid-bribe in the corner, dropped his cigar. Ned blinked, his face flushing, and stammered, "Gosh darn diddly, folks, I'm sorrier than a sinner on Sunday." He forced a laugh and sat down, but the damage was done. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and Marge exchanged a worried glance with Helen Lovejoy. By nightfall, the rumor mill was in overdrive, fueled by Homer's visit to Moe's Tavern. After downing 3 Duff beers, he leaned over the bar, his eyes wide with exaggerated terror. "I'm telling you, Moe, Flanders is possessed. His eyes looked like burnt donuts, and he growled like that time I stole his lawnmower." Moe snorted, but Lenny and Carl leaned in, intrigued. By the time Homer stumbled home, half of Springfield was buzzing with tales of Demon Ned. Apu, locking up the Quickie Mart, muttered about Ned's unnatural stare, while groundskeeper Willie claimed he saw Ned muttering to himself in the churchyard, like he was arguing with the devil himself. Lisa, however, wasn't buying the supernatural gossip. Sitting at the kitchen table, she scribbled in her notebook, connecting dots that others ignored. The old Jasper hadn't been seen at the Springfield retirement castle since the church incident, and the crazy cat lady's yowling had vanished from the streets. "Something's not right," Lisa murmured, ignoring Marge's plea to leave poor Ned alone. Her curiosity burned brighter than ever, especially after overhearing Rod and Todd at school whispering about their dad's strange new prayers. That night, Ned knelt in his bedroom, hands clasped around a rosary. The room was silent, save for the faint creak of the house settling. Then a whisper slithered from the corner, low and rasping, like dry leaves on pavement. Ned's head snapped. Up, his eyes darting to a small fragment of the St. Jeremiah statue, which he'd brought home from the church. It sat on his nightstand, its surface faintly glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Absorb their sins," the voice hissed, cold and insistent. Ned's breath hitched, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and reverence. "Is that you, Lord?" he whispered, clutching the fragment. The voice didn't answer, but a shadow seemed to coil tighter around him, and for the first time, Ned Flanders felt something darker than faith stirring in his soul. Springfield's unease grew thicker, like fog rolling in from the tire fire. Ned Flanders' outburst at the neighborhood meeting had become the talk of the town, and whispers of his possession spread faster than Homer's tab at Moe's. Lisa Simpson, however, wasn't convinced by the gossip. Armed with her notebook and a nagging sense of dread, she decided to get to the bottom of Ned's strange behavior. The disappearances of Jasper and the crazy cat lady gnawed at her, their absence too coincidental to ignore. "There's a pattern here," she muttered, dodging Bart's attempt to flick a spitball at her during breakfast. Under the guise of borrowing gardening tips for a school project, Lisa knocked on the Flanders door that afternoon. Ned answered, his smile as wide as ever, but his eyes darted nervously like a man expecting bad news. "Why, Lisa Diddley Isa? What a neighborly surprise," he chirped, ushering her inside. The house was immaculate as always, but a faint, sour odor lingered, like spoiled milk mixed with something metallic. Ned excused himself to fetch a potted azalea, leaving Lisa alone in the living room. Her gaze fell on a trapdoor in the corner, partially hidden by a rug. The smell was stronger there, and curiosity overpowered her caution. She lifted the trapdoor and descended into the basement, her heart pounding. The sight that greeted her was something out of a nightmare. In the dim glow of a flickering bulb, rows of hooks lined the walls, each holding a grotesque mask. Human faces, peeled and preserved, their expressions frozen in exaggerated emotions. One, with a forced smile, was unmistakably Jasper's, his. Wrinkles etched in leathery skin. Another, with eyes wide in terror, bore the crazy cat lady's features, her mouth twisted as if mid-scream. Lisa's breath caught, her hand clapping over her mouth to stifle a gasp. The masks seemed to stare back, their empty eye holes glinting with an unnatural sheen. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, and Lisa spun around to find Ned standing behind her, his face calm but unnervingly blank. "Oh, Lisa, you found my collection of redemption," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. He stepped closer, holding a mask that radiated sorrow, its lips downturned. Ned explained, his words tumbling out with fervent conviction. After the church incident, he'd received a divine calling to cleanse Springfield of its sins, gluttony, sloth, envy. By wearing these masks, he could absorb the townsfolk's flaws, purifying their souls. "It's God's work, Lisa Diddley Isa," he said, his eyes gleaming with a manic intensity that chilled her. Before Lisa could respond, a low, rasping whisper filled the room. The Jasper Mask's lips twitched, murmuring, "More, we need more." Ned's head tilted, as if listening to a sermon, and he nodded. "The masks guide me," he said, his voice distant. "They know who's next." Lisa's stomach churned as she realized the masks weren't just trophies. They were alive in some horrible way, urging Ned deeper into his madness. She stammered an excuse and bolted up the stairs, promising herself she'd warn someone, anyone, before it was too late. Meanwhile, Bart, oblivious to Lisa's discovery, decided to escalate his prank war. Armed with a bottle of holy water, tap water from the Simpsons sink, he crept into Ned's yard and splashed it over the rose bushes, yelling, "Take that, demon Ned!" The response was immediate and terrifying. Ned burst from the house, wearing a mask contorted in rage, its features unrecognizable. He let out a guttural roar, his eyes wild behind the leather. Bart, for once genuinely scared, dropped the bottle and sprinted home, muttering, "Okay, maybe Homer's onto something." The town's panic grew as more residents vanished. Sideshow. Mel's unicycle was found abandoned near the Krusty Burger, and the sea captain's pipe washed up by the Springfield River. Chief Wiggum dismissed it as folks taking a break, but Lisa knew better. She connected the disappearances to Ned's basement, her mind racing with dread. That evening, Marge, worried about Ned's isolation, invited him for tea. He arrived wearing a mask of unnatural joy, its grin too wide, its eyes too bright. Marge, unsettled, tried to make small talk, but Ned's laughter was forced, punctuated by long, eerie silences. As he left, Marge turned to Homer, her voice trembling. "Ned doesn't seem himself anymore." Homer, munching a sandwich, shrugged. Maybe he's just tired of being so darn diddly." Springfield teetered on the edge of panic, its streets quieter than they'd been in years. The disappearances of Sideshow Mel and the sea captain had fueled the rumors about Ned Flanders. But the town's lethargy, perhaps its greatest sin, kept most from acting. Lisa Simpson, however, couldn't shake the image of those grotesque masks in Ned's basement, their leathery faces whispering for more. She tried to warn her family, but Homer waved her off, saying, "Lisa, if I worried about every weird thing in Springfield, I'd never have time for donuts." Bart, still rattled from Ned's enraged outburst, was less dismissive, muttering, "Yeah, well, Flanders ain't exactly handing out cookies anymore." Homer's skepticism didn't last. Fueled by a mix of bravado and duff-fueled bravado, he decided to confront Ned himself. Late that evening, he marched to the Flanders house, banging on the door. "Hey, Flanders, if you're possessed, at least give me a beer before you eat my soul," he bellowed, half laughing. The door creaked open, and Ned stood there wearing a mask of raw fury, its features twisted into a snarl that didn't belong to any known Springfield face. In his hand gleamed a sharp, curved tool, something between a scalpel and a gardening shear. Homer's grin faltered. Okay, maybe. I'll come back later," he stammered, but Ned's empty stare pinned him in place. The door slammed shut, and the night swallowed the sound of Homer's nervous chuckle. Morning brought dread to the Simpson household. Homer didn't stumble downstairs for his usual breakfast of waffles and whipped cream, a first in Marge's memory. She found a note on his pillow, written in Ned's neat looping script, "Homer's being purified, okily dokily." Marge's hands shook as she read it aloud, her voice cracking. Lisa's heart sank. She knew what purified meant. "We have to stop him," she said, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing at her. Bart, for once, didn't argue. His slingshot clutched tightly as if it could fend off whatever Ned had become. Lisa ran to the town hall, hoping to convince Mayor Quimby to act. She burst into his office, words tumbling out about Ned's masks and the missing people. Quimby, lounging with a cigar, barely looked up. "Kid, Springfield's got bigger problems, like rats in the nuclear plant. Go play your saxophone or something." Defeated but determined, Lisa returned home, where Bart finally admitted he believed her. "Flanders looked like he wanted to skin me," he said, shuddering. They vowed to save Homer, but the clock was ticking. In Ned's basement, a ritual unfolded. The air was thick with the stench of decay and candle wax. At the center of the room stood an altar, cobbled together from hymnals and broken pews, with the glowing fragment of the St. Jeremiah statue pulsing like a dying star. Ned knelt before it, his hands trembling as he lifted a new mask, Homer's. Face, freshly crafted, its skin sagging, eyes wide in a frozen scream. The other masks hung on their hooks, their whispers rising into a cacophony. Complete the collection, cleanse them all. Ned's lips moved in silent prayer, but his eyes were vacant, lost in the voices that had consumed him. He slipped on Homer's mask, and for a moment his voice mimicked Homer's, slurring, donuts." before dissolving into a chilling laugh. The next evening, Springfield seemed to hold its breath. From their window, Marge, Lisa, and Bart watched as Ned appeared in his own, his face serene, almost saintly. In his hands was Homer's mask, its lips twitching as if whispering secrets only Ned could hear. The town's lights flickered, then went out, one by one, until darkness cloaked the streets. Rod and Todd, pale and silent, were seen leaving our house the next morning, dragging suitcases behind them. Marge clutched her children, tears in her eyes, while Lisa whispered, "He thinks he's saving us. But who's saving Ned?" As Ned's soft laughter echoed through the silent town, the masks in his basement stirred, hungry for more.